This is the hottest 200-meter field ever assembled at the Olympic Games. Second attempt now to get them away. Peter Norman did get a good start, I thought. Smith is doing well. His leg seems to be standing up okay. Look at Carlos go in the center of the field, and Questad is not beaten by any means. Peter Norman running beautifully, and he's got them heading into the 100 meters. Peter Norman is flying on the outside. Here comes Eigen Herr of West Germany. He's a threat. So too is the Trinidadian Roberts. In the center of the field is Tommy Smith running through, and Peter Norman runs a place. Smith pulled muscle and all. Couldn't have pulled it that badly. He beat John Carlos. And Peter Norman could have run a second place. Whether second or third, it was a great performance by the...
On October 17, 2005, San Jose State University unveiled a statue of the 1968 Olympic Victory Stand Protest Salute by sprinters Tommy Smith and John Carlos. The statue, over 20 feet tall, was the culmination of a student-led effort to remember and honor these two former students. This was almost 37 years to the day. It was and is easily one of the most memorable moments in the history of sport. The two teammates raised a black-gloved fist in the air as a gesture of racial and global solidarity with oppressed minorities, not just in the United States, but in the world at large. The following will be the previously untold story about exactly how this sculpture was conceived, produced, and placed on campus. It will be told from the personal perspective of the 6 people who were most instrumental in making this iconic piece of art: Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Rigo, the artist who created and made the sculpture; Eric Groves, the student who had the original idea; Dr. Robert Milnes, head of the San Jose State University Art Department at the time; and Alfonso de Alba, executive director of Associated Students at the time, who steered the process start to finish. This is the story of 2 student athletes who took a stand for social justice. This is the story of San Jose State University students who took a stand for a project about social activism. This is the story of those involved that took a stand to shepherd this project through to fruition. This is their story.
Many years after, I became an employee of the Associated Students. And as an employee of Associated Students, my responsibility is to encourage student leaders to go beyond their regular lives on the campus and create changes to the university and the world that they see fit in the time. And one of the things that I was able to work with, one project, an important project, was a project that was brought in to me by a student leader on this campus, Eric Groves. Eric came into my office and he told me that he had just left a class of Professor Kobe Harris, and in which the professor had actually explained to him the injustice that Tommy Smith and John Carlos had suffered after the Olympics in 1968 for taking their stand.
Today or tomorrow? Okay, big hug. Thanks for calling, man.
I opened the envelope, and it was a call for applications, a call for submissions for a sculptural tribute honoring Tommy Smith, John Carlos, and student activism. And my heart started, beating faster. I look at the letter again, and the deadline, I cannot tell you the day of the month, but I know that the deadline was Friday, and I was looking at it on Wednesday. And I was like, he had the it wasn't completely the opposite state of mind that I felt I was in. He was just so calm, And I remember perfectly, he said, well, a good idea is a good idea, even scribbled on a napkin. And I was like, oh wait, no. I said, that's a no-brainer. I said, the idea is I don't have a problem with that. You can't possibly reinvent the wheel. The idea is already done. They did it. So he goes, well, maybe you should submit something. Like intergenerational, intercultural aspirations and projections of goodwill towards the future that were at the inception of this thing coming from all over the place. So I was very clear with them. I said, look, I'm in way over my head. I've never done figurative sculpture, you know. But one thing I'm clear on, I don't want it to come out wrong. And of course, once upon meeting John Carlos and Tommy Smith, they also made that very clear, particularly John Carlos, with his sense of humor and directness. And because already, you know, 15 years ago, more so now, but already 15 years ago, there was this thing of Silicon Valley.
Kobe Harris taught political science, and that was my major. He talked about people who go long underrated for what they had done, and he talked about Tommy Smith and John Carlos as being two of the prime examples. And I kind of did a double take, because even though you're always aware of the iconic photograph, I didn't even know that they were San Jose State students. I'd never known that. That kind of schooled me that there were students here and there wasn't even a plaque. So I kind of challenged myself to go around and see if I could find anything. I took it as an elected official of the Associated Students that this was a significant undertaking. I think we all knew part of the story until we took a deep dive and looked at the information, looked at the media. Again, I was taken aback. Where you have prestigious alumni that were so key in a world event, and there's no mention of anything anywhere on this campus. So I sought to change that.
In the beginning, it was Eric Gross, the student body president at San Jose State University, who first came to me with the proposal for doing a memorial sculpture for Tommy Smith and John Carlos. And I was really delighted, but I was skeptical because I didn't know the extent of Eric's resolve, how far or how much the student body was behind this, whether they had the funding, whether they had the vision, really, of what this might be, and finally, whether they had the resolve to carry it through.
You have to understand that I've always been interested in art, the participatory aspect of art, the potential for art to involve larger groups of people. That's why I've always, been particularly interested in public art. And so the mandate coming from the Associated Students was to honor two individuals and an immaterial notion of student activism. So the mandate was a sculptural tribute to Tommy Smith, John Carlos, and student activism, So in my mind it was like 1, 2, 3, and it was coming from the University of San Jose's student body, honoring two members of the student body from decades before.
All the deeds turned into one deed. A student named Eric Gross got the idea in a class with a professor, I can't really remember his name. So Eric wanted to know why, if these guys went to school here, do we have no knowledge on this campus of what they did? And he wanted to have some legislation from the student body for some sort of monument or a plaque on a tree, but they didn't know how to go about it. Now, when they decided they want to build this statue, and they put out these flyers, they selected this artist to do it, Portuguese guy named Rigo. They really didn't know anything about the artist Rigo and his work. To this day, I don't know why there hasn't been any real interest in how this all happened.
And also, living at a very urban place at the time. I was living in, at the heart of the Mission District in San Francisco, pre-gentrification. It was a lot of activism from refugees from Latin America, from poets, queer people. Bohemia was a very rich place, and so even though I grew up in a different country, I was immersed in sort of a street language, And in street language, when somebody has your back, that means they're protecting you, So my sense with this is that when the students of today were to address their campus, these two giants would have their back.
The idea of building a sculpture came out at a meeting with Eric Groves and myself in the Associated Students office. He was looking for us to do something that will represent the movement. I suggested the sculpture, and he suggested creating a resolution to the Associated Students Board of Directors for Associated Students to lead the effort of doing that. The idea was approved by Associated Students. Funding from Associated Students came into the project, and Eric Groves, as well as the Board of Directors of Associated Students, came up with a direction of let's bring enough people together to make sure that this project will get done and it will not be derailed.
The creation of this monumental work was a complicated process that involved, like all things, a lot of changes in the work as it moved along. Changes not so much in the nature of it or how it was going to be constructed, but in the processes and placement and the needs for the space around it.
To tell you the truth, when I first got wind of the statue, overall, I wasn't that enthused about it. I thought it was going to be the same bronze statue, and bronze turns into turquoise and pigeons shit all over it. But when I talked to Rigo, he said, no, I have something bigger in mind. When I first met Rigo, he seemed to be a sharp individual. And then we began these various fundraising activities. And Rigo would show this little makeup of what the project would look like. But Rigo had said, John, I'm going to make the statue identical in facial expression. And I was still thinking bronze, and Rigo said, no, I'm going to make these uniforms identical to the uniforms you wore in Mexico City. And I said, how are you going to do that? I never thought that he was going to be able to take those photographs and do those tiles to the perfection of the uniforms. Now, I'm working with the genius of this guy who knew how it was back in the time, and I looked that way. I could see myself, someone else is one thing, but I could see myself looking back at me once upon a destiny right here. When my mom saw it, she looked up at it and cried.
From there, I started to work with others and Associated Students. Drafted a resolution because I felt this was work we could do within our own capacity. And just to kind of say to the university that this was a prerogative, that this was important to commemorate one way or another. I think one of the key aspects in terms of college years is that you want to make a difference. Your time is now. Reach out and go get it. Make an impression.
For Rigo, the sculpture of Tommy Smith and John Carlos means more than art. It is meant to bring an important moment in history alive and to help people understand and celebrate human rights. Since Smith and Carlos were SJSU students, Rigo also wanted to create a platform for current and future students to become a part of history.
I'm sure you're all very kind. Thank you very, very much to San Jose State University for allowing me to be part of today. Thank you very, very much to the Associated Students of San Jose State University for their foresight in what they've done with this very, very important issue.
Prestigious, respectable, pungent, shocking, and revealing. We didn't give the finger. We didn't give the butt. We didn't wrap the flag around our head or tie it up like a diaper. We didn't stand there with disrespect. We stood there to say, hey man, I'm America, I'm your son, and I'm wounded.
Students, rise up and walk. For those of you who know silver and gold have a none at the gate, who was it told him, when Paul told us the beggar, you get up, you stand up, rise up and walk.
The first time I saw this sculpture actually standing up for the first time, I was humbled by it. I felt that what was accomplished was bigger than what all of us that participated in the project who had ever had a true understanding of what it was, what it represented, and what was going to be its impact on future generations of students and the community and everyone that will come in contact with it.
Rise up and walk.
What we ended up with is a significant part of the San Jose campus, a record for history of student engagement, both in through Tommy Smith and John Carlos's work, and also through Eric Groats and the student unions as a result, and also a reflection on the community of San Jose State and the community around it, and its support over time for what had been Tommy Smith and John Carlos's Courageous Act.
I think, like Alfonso said before, even though I had a clear vision of what I wanted to accomplish, I think it exceeded that vision, because again, one thing that did not exist when the sculpture was dedicated was this culture of the selfie. That did not exist back then. But many people, take photos next to monuments or next to particular views. But here, this statue, when you stand on this spot and you take a photo, you're not taking a photo of yourself next to a statue. You're taking a photo of yourself being part of a statue. So you're integral, you're part of the statue at that moment.
Everybody in San Jose State, we made us here, and we did the 25th anniversary last year, and we hope to do the 26th one in 2006. Thank you guys. Good night.
When I walk past this statue, it just reminds me how important it is to make sacrifices for what you believe in. These guys sacrificed everything they worked for, the medals, for a greater good. It just reminds me to be brave for what I believe in.
So Rigo has been my chariot glove. His work and the symbolism behind this work, he has gone so much beyond this work in getting involved. I also think that at the same time, people came to observe and still come. Kids from all over the Bay Area, high school, middle school, they all come here. And people from around the world, they see this thing on TV. Every time you see something about San Jose State, basketball, football, or whatever, this is the first thing you see. When they come here, it's the first thing they go to, the statue. Not just from California, but from all over. The first thing they do is come to that statue. They come and have their pictures taken there because it means so much to so many people. It's almost surreal on how they see themselves in it. The thumbs up behind my back was because of a goal we had achieved, accomplished. It wasn't about me. It wasn't even about the medal. If I had done the demonstration by myself, it wouldn't have meant anything. Then the whole 9 yards would have been forgotten. We had the community and our community there, and thank God Peter Norman was with us. We had the whole community.